All right, we've been talking a lot about percents, and one of the biggest seventh grade standards dealing with percent actually gets into the percent that something has changed. All right, so you've got this idea about how much percent is of certain things and finding the missing part, and now we're going to talk about what percent of change actually means. Okay, so here's how you go about tackling this. And to find what the percent of change is, make this ratio or this fraction. You talk about how much did it change. So we usually have a starting number and an ending number. And then calculate how much it changed. That will tell you, as you look at the two numbers, whether it's an increase if it went up or a decrease if it went down. You divide it by the original or the starting number. And I guess I shouldn't even really say price here. It's just your original number, whatever that may be and whatever we're comparing. When you divide those two, you will get a fraction or a decimal number, and you simply need to then convert it into a percent. So let's take a look at a few of these, okay? In 1980, back when I was in high school, gas was $1.25 a gallon. When I drove into work today, I saw that gas was up to $2.55. I say up to because we've been spoiled lately with pretty cheap gas prices. So, if I asked you, I want you to find the percent that this changed. The first thing I want you to do is find the difference between these prices. So first, take and subtract these two, because right now it's $2.55. Back in 1980, it was $1.25. So when I subtract those two, you find that the difference is $1.30. Okay? Then, what we need to do is, my rule said, find out how much it changed, and then you divide it by the original or the starting number. All right, so I'm going to take $1.30 and divide it by the 125 that I started on. When you calculate that, go ahead and grab your calculator, because I wouldn't do this by hand either. When you do this calculation, you get 1.04. Now hold your horses. That's the decimal representation of this value. You need to convert this into percent. Going from decimal to percent means multiply by 100, or move that decimal point 2 spots. So the percent that it increased is 104%. Think about it. That makes sense. I went up $1.30 from here to here, and that's more than, a little bit more than, doubling this amount. I went up more than $1.25. If I went up exactly $1.25, that'd be 100% increase. This is even a little bit more than that, and it's 104%. All right, let's do some calculations here, because I like to talk about when I was a senior in high school and what it is like today. Back in my day, going to the movies was pretty cheap, it seems, but it's all really relative compared to what salaries were, what your pay was, what the cost of living was. All those factors go into it. So let's first of all figure out how much, or what the percent of increase is from going to a movie back in 1980 compared to today. All right, if I say around $8 for a movie ticket today compared to back then, the difference between these two, and again this is an increase because it went up, is $5.31. That's the difference when I subtract those two. Then you have to divide it by where you started, the 269. And when you do that, you get a decimal of 1.97. This will round to a percent of about 197.4%. Okay, so the increase around 197.4%. Let's talk about a good old standby that most people have to purchase. $2.16 a gallon back then for a gallon of milk. Today it's about $3.19 the last time I checked. So the difference here, or the amount that it's changed, has been $1.03. My original or starting number is $2.16. When you calculate that, this one I get 0.47 6, 8, and the decimal goes on a ways until it starts to repeat. When I multiply by 100, I'll get 47. I'll round it to about 7/10 of a percent. That's drastically different from what the movie was. Let's take a look at the cost of a stamp. A postage stamp to mail back in 1980 was 15 cents. Today, it's 49 cents. The difference there, the price has gone up 34 cents in these 35 years. My original starting price was 15 cents. So when you divide those two, I end up with 226. And then if you round that, you'll notice that this is a 6 repeating. I'm just going to round it to the tenths place, so around 0.7%. That's a little more consistent with the movie here. All right, let's look at the next thing. An average house, let's say, back in 1980 was around $76,400. Today, somewhere maybe around $195,000. There's been some changes there with the housing market and some drastic changes in the last 7-8 years, but we'll go with this. Let me get back. All right, so first find the difference between these two. When you subtract, the change is $118,600. Okay, and then you're going to divide by your original amount, which was $76,400. When you do that computation, divide those two, you get about 155, and I'll round that off. It says 0.23, so I'll say around 0.2% on that one. Okay. Oh, here's a good one. Income. Back in 1980, a starting salary, kind of an average or median, was around $17,710. Today, maybe around $49,777. I was looking up some information, I think from a Department of Labor website. So when you calculate the difference between these two and subtract, let's see, the amount that it changed or that it increased was $32,067. You have to divide that by the original or the starting number, 17,710. When you do that, and then multiply by 100 again, you'll see you'll get approximately 181.1%. Notice how most of these are in the well over 100%, many of them pushing to around 200%. But this is the one that I really wanted to talk to you about and give you a real eye-opener. Let's talk about college. Now, granted, I went to a private school. My first year of college, and actually this would have been in the fall of 1981, my tuition and room and board was $6,450. This year, 2014-15, the comprehensive fee there is $51,200. So go ahead and figure out, first of all, how much the change is from $51,200 minus $6,450. The amount that it changed or increased was $44,750. Divide that by the starting number, $6,450. And here's the reality check, okay? The amount or the percent that college has increased, at least at my alma mater, is 693.8%. Notice how this number is completely out of whack compared to the rest of these. That's because college has increased at an incredibly higher rate than everything else, than people's income, than the price of housing, than the cost of many standard goods. And that is why it is so important for you as students to work your hardest in school, get as much scholarship money, and save your money now, because college costs you way more and a higher percentage or piece of your income and your parents' income than it cost me. It's a pretty sad situation, and that is why students today are going into such incredible debt. All right, let's look at some other standard ones here just to make sure you get the hang of it. If this is my starting price and this is where I end, and I'm asking you, find the percent that it changed. First of all, this one went down, so this is actually a percent that something decreased. Okay, this is how something decreased. In particular, it decreased $16. My original price is 64. When you take and compute this, you will get the decimal 0.25. That equates to a 25% change, or a 25% decrease. What I want to do is practice some of the types of questions that you will see in IXL. Here's a situation where you kind of have to work backwards, and using percent of change is a great example. Let's say I'm going and I'm going to buy, I don't know, a new iPad or something, and when I look at it, it says it's $449. When I get to the checkout, the total amount that's rung up is $480.43. Okay, so this was my final price here that I had to pay. And that's because in between here there was sales tax. Okay, now my question to you is, first of all, what is the percent of the sales tax? Okay, what was the sales tax rate here when I purchased this particular iPad? Well, what you can do is say, well, if I want to find the percent of this tax, I first have to figure out how much was this tax. Go ahead and subtract the $480.43. Grab your calculator. Subtract $449 from that, and you will find that your cost was $31.43. That's how much tax you paid. I'm asking you, what percent of that original price was this sales tax? Okay, so you can do it a couple of different ways. I think if you use this percent change thing, think like this. The $31.43 was how much tax. You divide that by the original. On this price, how much was this? When you do this division, you get this decimal, 7/100. That is the decimal. When you convert this into percent, you need to multiply by 100, and it's 7%. Okay? If this makes sense to you, awesome. Then just keep doing it this way. If this is hard for you to remember, then think of it this way. When I found how much my tax was, basically my question is I know I had to take my percent, whatever that is, and I don't know, my percent of the price of my original item, which was $449, that had to equal $31.43. This is that whole of and is. My sales tax percentage of $449 is $31.43. When you go to solve this, because remember of means multiply, to figure out what P is, you need to isolate it or get it alone by undoing the multiplying by 449. 449 over 449 is 1, and you get P equals this, which is exactly what I just did here. That gives you the decimal converted into the percent. Let's try one more that kind of goes the other way before I turn you loose on the assignment, okay? All right, here's the last situation. Let's say of course, I'm shopping and I'm always on those clearance racks, and I find an awesome pair of boots. And the boots originally were marked at $60, okay? And at that price, I'm like, nah, I don't need them that badly. But now they're on sale, and the sale price is $18. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I cannot pass this deal up. But I'm curious, what was the percent of the discount on this thing? Okay, what was the percent of the discount? Now I'm going to show you probably 3 ways to do this. Stick with me, and you use the one that makes sense to you. All right, so here's method number 1. Utilizing what we know about how to find percent of change. All right, first of all, tell me, how much did your price change? My price went from $60 to $18. It went down $42. Yahoo! That's awesome. My formula or my method for finding a percent of change or decrease is you take how much did it change and divide by the original or starting price. Okay? When you take 42 divided by 60 on your calculator, you end up with 7/10 or 0.7. As a percent multiplied by 100, that is a 70% discount. Okay? This was the discount right there, 70%. Okay? That's method number 1 right there. Here's method number 2, because this one I can almost see in my head. If I paid $18, okay, I paid $18. If I took 18 out of 60, that means I paid 0.3, or I paid 30% of the original price. This is what I paid. That means the discount would simply be taking 100% minus this 30%, and you end up with 70%. That was the amount of the discount. Okay, right there. Because this is original price, this is the percent that I paid. That means that's how much the discount was. You could think of it that way. Or, okay, just to probably make things even more confusing, you go back to thinking what I've told you about this percent equation, with is always translating to the equal sign, the of translating to your multiplication. And the question that you're really asking is this: what percent, I'm going to say, well, I'll write it out. What percent of my original $60 price is, and then you had to find the difference there, is $42. Okay, because that is my discount. What percent of $60 is 42? Well, whatever you don't know, you call the variable. I'm going to call it P for percent. Of means times. 60 is translates into your equal sign, and here's 42. Aha! Get the variable by itself and isolate it by undoing whatever's happening to it. Divide by 60. That gives me 1 over 1. P times 1 is P. 42 over 60 is the same as 7 over 10, which is the same as 0.7, which as a percent is 70%. All right, there's a bunch of different options for you. I like to think of, I guess for me, this is my way of thinking. But if any of the rest of these make sense to you, go ahead and do it whichever way makes sense to you. Good luck and get going on the assignment.